Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show. Hey, Jai picks the other half of the show, the parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC Vegas 86. Let's get into it. We're back at the Apex for UFC Vegas 86. A lot of people kind of shitting on this card, but I think it's an absolute banger. No, I'm kidding. It's not a banger, but it is a card. And we got 14 fights, a very healthy lineup. A lot of debuters, a lot of guys making their sophomore outing, a lot of interesting matchups, I would say. I would honestly say the matchups we got on this card are decent.
Yeah,
they're interesting enough where it's like, you're just like, I don't really care about this fight. They're interesting. If you're a diehard fight fan, you'll be invested. And that's what we both are. So we're definitely invested. What do you think of the card overall? Obviously, main event, Joe Pyfer, Jack Hermansson. Pyfer getting the nod. Main event, only his fourth fight in the UFC. Hermansson been around for a while. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not the best card like you said, but there are some matchups that I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised with. If you're a diehard fan, you're going to know all these guys, but if you're not and you're tuning in, I think you're going to become fans of a few of these fighters. There's some guys making their debut that are going to be a ton of fun to watch. I mean, look at Aoriqileng. He was phenomenal in the Contender Series. He's got that style people are going to like. You got Joe Pyfer, who with a win here just catapults himself into becoming, kind of a blossoming UFC star. So there's a lot of those type of matchups. There's a lot of those types of fighters. And this type of card, you're going to learn a lot about some of these up-and-coming guys.
Yeah, sometimes that's the best. You see the great performances on the Contender Series from Aoriqileng, Carlos Prates, and then you get to see like if they're really that good or if it was just one time out there, they're against a bad opponent. They're going to face UFC level right off the bat, and we're going to give our pick. We're going to give our breakdown for every single fight on this card. If you want the bets, you can join the Double Leg Premium. Links in the description for that. We do give out a free bet on the Instagram at the Double Leg. That is usually Saturday, but we're going to give our breakdown for each and every fight and let you know our leans. So we got 14 fights. Don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's hop into it. Starting with the first fight of the night, Daniel Marcos coming in as a favorite against Aoriqileng. Daniel Marcos, undefeated, 30 years of age. So is Aoriqileng, and very similar height and reach, actually exact. What do you think on this fight? Does Daniel Marcos stay undefeated, or does Aoriqileng snatch the zero?
I think Daniel Marcos stays undefeated, and it's just a better style for him than even his last fight against Davy Grant. Like, I thought Davy Grant won the fight in the last one. Yep. I watched it again. I still kind of leaned that way, but I think right initially is because I had a bet on Davy Grant against him.
Yep.
But Daniel Marcos showed me that he can fight for all 3 minutes. He's got a style where he's dangerous at all times. His striking, like technical wise, he's as good as it comes. He's got some pop in his hands. He's not going to just flatline everybody he fights or anything like that. But as a well-rounded mixed martial artist, I think he's constantly improving. His takedown defense is good enough to keep the fights where he wants, and that's going to be a big factor here. I mean, I think he's got a good enough chin. He's going to be able to take shots at the UFC level. Nobody's really put him in a lot of danger yet. But he's shown good takedown defense, especially in that first fight he had against Simon Oliveira. Aoriqileng is going to use this big power shots and the striking to come forward, and he's going to look to mix in takedowns against Daniel Marcos. I mean, anybody who stands and trades with Daniel Marcos for 3 rounds, you're not giving yourself the best chance because you can't knock him out. He's going to land the bigger shots. He's going to be more accurate. Then you're just not going to win that ball game. But Aoriqileng, if he gets the fight to the ground, he lands 1.64 per fight at a 46% clip. If he can get it to the ground, we'll see what Marcos has off of his back. But if he can't, I think this is Daniel Marcos, probably by decision or even possibly middle to late round or later in the fight finish for him. But yeah, I got to go with Marcos on this one.
Yeah, I like Daniel Marcos as well. He had that long layoff, and then he had the Contender Series fight. Nobody really knew where to price him. He was an underdog on the Contender Series. Picks up a unanimous decision win in a fight where he dominated. Goes on to the UFC, another underdog spot, and he picks up a win, second round TKO to Simon Oliveira. And then the split decision to Davy Grant. I think we both had a bet on Davy Grant as a dog, and I think he should have won that fight. It was a split. And ultimately, I just thought Davy Grant did a little bit more active, but being the pasty white Davy Grant that he is, didn't wear the damage very well. And Marcos picks up the win. So he's facing Aoriqileng, who not really like the best UFC run. You look at his wins, they're against Cameron Ells, who's been cut, Jay Perrin, who's been cut, Johnny Munoz, who should probably be cut. And then the losses are to Eamon Zahabi, Cody Durden, and Jeff Molina. So, I mean, it looks like if he faces any type of decent competition, he's going to lose.
Right.
And in this spot, he's a almost 2-1 underdog. And Daniel Marcos being undefeated, looking at the film on him, he looks like he should be able to get a win here. Aoriqileng, negative strike differential. I think he's just going to walk forward. Marcos is going to be able to piece him up, use the kicks, use the hands, and get a win. He could pick up a knockout here. I mean, Aoriqileng got sparked by Eamon Zahabi, who's not really like a big knockout guy. And that was his first ever career knockout loss, Aoriqileng's. So does he have chin issues? I wouldn't really say so, but considering the last knockout loss that he took, it was like, where did that come from? Because it wasn't really like some big power punch or anything. But yeah, I'm going to go with Daniel Marcos in this one. I think he gets it done fairly easily.
Yeah. Yep.
Featherweight bout, Haider Amil coming in as the favorite against Fernie Garcia. And Garcia is 0-3 in the UFC. And he kind of needs a win here. He's taking the fight on short notice. He's stepping in for Melsik Bagdasaryan. Haider Amil making his UFC debut. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think this is the fight where people are going to look at the 0-3 in the UFC for Fernie and automatically bet Haider. But at that price, man, these guys coming off the Contender Series, sometimes they pan out. Other times, they're just not quite there yet. And Fernie Garcia is not a bum by any means. Like, he's hard to put away, for one. He's fought nothing but straight up grapplers. Like Rinya Nakamura in his last fight, I can't remember if he had a 100% finish rate or not, but he was damn close to it, and he had just been murdering everybody. And Fernie survived with him off of his back for 3 rounds. Like Rinya on the ground is, Olympic level wrestler who gets a ton of submissions, and Fernie was able to survive. So, if Haider comes in here and looks to wrestle, I mean, I think that's got to be his path to victory against Fernie. We've seen guys do it before. The Brady Heastand fight against Fernie Garcia. Guys are able to win minutes and win enough minutes to get the win against him. But if he stands and he trades with him, I don't think Fernie Garcia, he's obviously not the most powerful guy, but I think he's a good enough striker that he's going to hang with some of these newer guys like Haider Amil. And the one thing that on Haider's side that would concern me is he does come out, he sees the game plan of the wrestling and just gets tired as hell. And then as the fight goes on, Fernie's going to start stuffing the takedowns. Fernie's going to keep it at range. Fernie's just going to start piecing him up. Like I said, not with the most power, but with accuracy, with slick boxing. It's going to look better to the judges. Almost like a Azat Maxim, Charles Johnson style. If Haider starts to fade, kind of like Maxim did last Saturday, I could see Fernie, pulling a Charles Johnson here. 3-fight losing streak, probably the better striker. And as the fight goes on, the one gets tired and the underdog starts rallying.
Yeah, I mean, Haider is making his debut at 33 years old. He's only got 8 fights in his professional career. And ultimately, if you watch his fights, he's kind of a guy that comes forward. He's going to put a lot of pressure on you. He's going to throw a good amount of volume. And he could look for some offensive wrestling as well. He does have Bellator experience, picked up 3 wins in Bellator back in 2018 and 2019, and then gets a couple wins or a few wins in LFA. And then that Contender Series fight, I had a bet on him because the guy he was facing, Emre Sanmez, is really just a grappler who doesn't have great cardio. And that fight was brutal to watch because Sanmez shot 23 times on Haider Amil. So Haider was just trying to defend takedowns the entire time. And Sanmez landed 5, but he'd only had 5 minutes of control time and shot 23 times. So he missed 18 of those. So I don't think Fernie Garcia is going to come out and be shooting takedowns. So
no,
Hyder could definitely go to his offensive wrestling, and that would probably be a smart thing to do because based on the film that I've watched, I think Fernie Garcia will be a little bit cleaner of a striker, especially with the hands. Hyder is he's kind of a junkyard dog. Like he's going to want to go in there and break you. And will the cardio hold up? Sometimes it looks really good. Sometimes it looks like he's gassed, but then he just finds a second gear. So in this one, I mean, I don't think I could lay minus 200 on a debuting 33-year-old. And honestly, Fernie Garcia probably taking this fight because he's 0-3, doing the UFC a favor. And he's like, I'll take it. And maybe the back is against the wall. Maybe he's looking to take this fight so he can, get in the good graces with the UFC and get a contract re-signed. But if he picks up a win, I would assume his negotiating power helps him a little bit. And at this line, I think I got to go with the dog because I think he's going to be able to do more damage on the feet as long as he can stuff the takedowns. I feel good about it. And sometimes when a fighter's back is against the wall, it's just like the best opportunity for him. We saw it last week with Charles Johnson. Like he was on a 3-fight losing streak. Probably going to get cut if he loses that, even though he was taking it on short notice as well. But he just comes out and makes it a dogfight. Like takes Maxim into deep waters and overall just put it on him late and then won the fight. So I think Fernie Garcia could get a win here. As a dog, I got to take him.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be on Fernie too. And, when I watch Hyder and I watch some of his LFA fights, he reminds me a lot of a guy like Billy Quarantillo. Like he's just going to take whatever the fight gives him. He's going to come forward. If he's having success with the striking, he's going to keep it there. If he lands a takedown, he's just going to follow into the guy's guard and he's just going to play the ground game. Like he'll just take whatever his opponent gives him. But man, I do like Fernie here as a dog, as like a big dog like this. But when you really do look at Fernie's record, 0-3 or 2, good fighters. Journey Newsom kind of on a little downslide. But other than that, beats Joshua Weems on the Contender Series. But before that, like in the LFA, he's going to split decisions with guys that are 3-4, 9-5. Like that makes me a little worried. Like he's always in such a close fight to where, he gives up minutes in fights. So it's interesting, but I just, minus 200 for a guy like Hyder who's making his debut at that age. Yeah, it's hard to get behind that price.
Right. Yeah. If Fernie had like a little bit more knockout power, yeah, all over it. But
split decision bet might be something to look at if you can find one.
Yeah, both guys pretty tough too. I mean, obviously Hyder's never been finished, never lost. Fernie's never been finished, and the over is steamed to minus 215. So they know what they're seeing here.
Yep.
Light heavyweight bout, Zach Pauga coming as a slight favorite against Bogdan Guskov, or the Anthony Smith no tattoos. Who you got in this one? Little light heavyweight scrap here. Who you got?
Yeah, and Guskov's debut against Volkan Oezdemir, I had a parlay that was like plus 5,000, and the last leg was Oezdemir by knockout, and he hurts him early in the fight and then ends up submitting him. But in that fight, I'm kind of seeing the same thing I am right now. I think he's kind of fraudulent. I think he's got some power, and that's about it. I mean, we've seen him on the regional scene too. Lose in the first round, just completely get his ass whooped. I don't know if he's UFC level. I think he's got the power to knock anybody out. We've seen Zach Pauga knocked out by Muhammad Uzun with that short little check left hook. And so that would, maybe concern me in the first round. But as this fight goes on, I think Guskov is going to get tired. I think if he eats a couple of big shots, he's one of those fighters when a couple shots land on the chin, it kind of changes the whole entire rest of the fight for him. He slows down a little. He starts to get a little shaky-legged. And, Pauga is a good boxer. He's athletic. He's not the most powerful guy. Like he doesn't come out here and starch guys for, as big as he is and athletic as he is, you'd kind of expect that out of him. But, so far in the UFC, he's beaten Jordan Wright, and he beat him by decision. Jordan Wright's kind of kill or be killed. In all of his fights, either gets a first-round KO or submission, or he gets knocked out. And Pauga kind of put him up against the cage and secured the easy win. Looking at all that, I got to stick with my instincts that Guskov's just not UFC level. I think, betting-wise, if you're betting on him, I think it's round 1 or bust. And if not, I think it's just Pauga all day. But I got to stick with Zach Pauga here.
Yeah, this is like it's such a weird fight because Guskov is a killer be killed type of guy, and you're going up against Pauga, who's shown he kind of just wants to throw you up against the cage and grind on you a little bit. Just not really shown many skills other than the ability to grind guys out. And against Bukauskas, he didn't really have a ton of success. That was a really close fight, and ultimately went to a unanimous decision to Bukauskas. And you look at his only win is to Jordan Wright, who's not a light heavyweight, definitely a middleweight, and that was like the last fight he had in the UFC. And just not a very good fighter. So I don't know. This is low-level light heavyweights. You're a 35-year-old guy in Pauga who hasn't really shown much in the UFC. I mean, he's not a big favorite by any means, but Guskov doesn't really look like a world beater by any means. And you look at like his wins on the regional scene, it's against cans. Like he's just crushing 40-year-old dudes or dudes that are just have no really skills at all. And he's putting them away like he should. But, you know, you could put away guys that are meant to be put away and then take it to the UFC, and then everything changes. So the bright side for Guskov is Zach Pauga is not Volkan Oezdemir. And can Zach Pauga implement his game plan? Maybe. He does have good cardio. He's got good wrestling. The striking is okay. And I just think Pauga probably tries to wear on him early, tire him out, and take over later. So I'll go with Pauga. If he doesn't get sparked in the first round, like you said, if you're going on Guskov, probably a round one knockout. Yep. But other than that, he doesn't have much to offer. So Pauga will be the pick, just a little bit more well-rounded for my liking. And we can move on. Welterweight bout, Max Griffin coming in as the dog against Jeremiah Wells. He is not from Uzbekistan. That is incorrect. He is from America, and he is not 6'3". But he is the favorite in this one. That is correct. And he is coming off a very disappointing loss. And the fact that he won the first 2 rounds and then gets snatched up in an anaconda choke that didn't even look like it was in. And then all of a sudden he's out. So he was 4-0 in the UFC, and then had the fight won and ultimately loses. He's looking to bounce back against Max Griffin, who's also looking to bounce back after a loss to Michael Morales, who is still undefeated and still looks pretty dang good. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, man, I've gone back and forth. I watched a lot of film on these two fighters. Jeremiah Wells has just been really disappointing to me based off, when he came into the UFC against Warley Alves, gets the knockout, then turns around and submits Blood Diamond really fast, then knocks out Court McGee. Should have lost to Matthew Simmelsberger, in my opinion, after that. And that's kind of where, I thought maybe, okay, he had an off night. He got clipped early in the fight. We'll see what happens. Comes in against Carlston Harris, had the fight won. And, I'm not going to say he gave up, but he got kind of caught in that choke. Didn't try to defend it or anything. Just laid on his back and went to sleep. It was one of the most strange things I've ever seen out of a fighter who's about to go out. But it showed me in that fight that if he's not, dictating where the fight goes early in the fight, or if he's getting kind of drug into deep waters and he's had to use his wrestling and he has to use his grappling in the first part of the fight, he's not really the same fighter in the late second to early third. And I think that's where Max Griffin can capitalize here. Griffin has shown good cardio in a lot of his fights. He went 3 rounds with Michael Morales. Didn't have a lot of success, but he landed some good shots. He was able to eat some big shots. And that was impressive to me because Michael Morales, undefeated, beating everybody in the UFC so far. I mean, the kid's 16-0. And, Max Griffin showed you he could tough that one out. Before that, the Tim Means fight, I see online, everybody's talking about the Tim Means, and it was a split decision, close fight. But if you watch that fight, which I'm guessing all the people saying that it was a close fight didn't, that was Max Griffin 30-27, 29-28 all day. And even Tim Means was surprised they called a split decision there. He dropped Means in the first round. He wrestled him up a little bit, landed some really good shots late in the fight, and won that pretty handily. Loses to Neil Magny, split decision, who's an absolute vet. And then he's got some decent wins behind that. So I think obviously the experience, he's been in the UFC since 2016. He's fought in some good guys. And you're going to give him Jeremiah Wells, who is a animal, but it's just, I don't even want to say controlled chaos. It's just chaos. He's wild. He makes a lot of mistakes. And I think if Max Griffin stays composed, gets on it puts on a good pace and, can keep up with the cardio, I think he's going to drown Wells later in this fight. And I don't mind him as a dog here at all.
Yeah, the positives for Max Griffin, he's only been finished one time in his entire career. Now it's to Colby Covington. It was a ground and pound, just kind of wore him down and put him out in the third round. So if you're going to fight Jeremiah Wells, you got to have some good durability because he's going to throw some big hooks at you. It's going to be very explosive. And on the ground, he's got good submission skills. So the negatives for Max Griffin is does he have the output and the takedown defense to deal with Jeremiah Wells? Because Jeremiah Wells showed against Semmelsberger, if he gets clipped, he can just take you to the ground, lay in your guard, win the round. And if Max Griffin can't get off his back, if he does get taken down, Jeremiah Wells is just going to rack up rounds, kind of like he did against Carlson Harris as well. Just takes the guy down. He's super strong. I mean, you could see by the picture, he's yoked up. He is 37 years of age, though. And that is a concern if you're betting on Jeremiah Wells, because how much more does he got left in the tank? Obviously, it looks like he's in great shape. But then you look also at the durability aspect. He got finished his last fight by submission, but he also got knocked down twice by Matthew Semmelsberger. And really, you could have been stopped. Like, he got knocked down a couple times, whereas this guy looks like he's out. And I think it was the second round where Semmelsberger knocked him down and he looked out completely. And then he hit him and it looked like he woke him back up. So Max Griffin does have some good power. And he's kind of a guy that is going to look for his power shots when they're there. And he's not really going to be swinging big bombs like Jeremiah Wells. He's going to use his striking and then pick his shot and really go at it with one. So I could see a way where Max Griffin picks up a knockout win here. And if it does go to a decision, it just comes down to if he can defend takedowns. As a dog, considering the experience he has and the experience at a high level too. I mean, he's fought in Colby Covington, Zaleski. He's got a win over Mike Perry. Other guys, Neil Magny, Michael Morales. He's been in there with some good guys. And Jeremiah Wells, I don't think has seen that level of competition yet. So I'm going to go with the dog as well. Plus 145 on Max Griffin, a vet, and going up against a guy who's also pretty old. I think I'll take him.
The last thing I'll say about Max Griffin and something that I kind of noticed watching film is he's got a 69% takedown defense over a long, UFC career that's lasted 8 years now. And basically that percentage, I mean, he's only been taken down more than once in the Colby Covington fight and the Tim Means fight. That's it. That's pretty damn good, in my opinion. He got taken down 6 times by Colby Covington in his debut, and that makes up a big portion of that 69% takedown defense of that, 31% where he is getting taken down. So, man, if he can hold up, I think on the feet, if he just stays safe and he has really good movement, he's not easy to hit. He's always moving his feet. He's got good footwork and he's in and out, and it makes it tough for a guy like Wells to just, unload bombs. It's not like his head's going to be sitting on the center line here. So, if he can stuff the takedowns, he's going to be the bigger guy, 5'11", a couple inches of reach. If he can do that, I think on the feet, he's going to have a chance to hurt Wells at times.
I like it. Light heavyweight bout, Marcin Prachnio coming in as a dog against Devin Clark, who is 2-3 in his last 5. We've seen the ups and downs with Devin Clark. He is somewhat undersized for the division. And then you look at his fights against Kennedy and Zechiku, who's 6'6", and you're like, dang, dude, this guy, he's got to be in a different weight class. But he is very thick, and he is 6 feet, but a very thick dude. And in a lot of these fights, he just really has to muscle up these dudes, get them to the ground, and grind on them. We've seen it in a lot of his fights, like the Daun Jung fight, the Alonzo Menefield fight. He just uses his strength. The cardio is pretty solid. And Prachnio, kickboxer by heart, by trade. That's his real background. He's going to look to stay at range, use mostly kicks, a lot of karate style kicks. So it's a clash of styles, one guy that wants to use his kicks, stay at range. Devin Clark needs to get on the inside and use his strength. So who you got in this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to take Prachnio for me, just based off of the fights you see when he's up against a guy who has some wrestling in their back pocket. And when Prachnio gets taken down, it seems like he gets up one time throughout the fight, and then if you put him back down, he's fighting off of his back for the rest of the round. Vitor Petrosyan took him down 4 times, beat him pretty easily, by submission in the 3rd round. But up until then, just kind of controlled him, did what he want. It was hard for Prachnio to really get back to his feet. The fight before that was William Knight, which made Prachnio look like a world champ because William Knight wouldn't throw. I mean, William Knight looked more like a body bag in that. I mean, he just sat there and took it. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But like Sam Alvey beat Prachnio, knocked him down a couple of times. After that, Magomed Ankalaev cracked the chin. So he can get hurt as well. But I think if you're Devin Clark here, you try to get to the leg. You try to get him down early in the fight, tire him out a little bit, take away that kickboxing from him, and I think he's got a better chance to win this fight. And Devin Clark's wrestling is not great, but he will kind of chain stuff together and just try to secure it. And if he doesn't, it could be an ugly fight sitting up against the fence for a lot of this. I would hate that. I think if you put these two in space, Devin Clark does swing for the fences sometimes. Prachnio's got some solid kicks and kickboxing, but ultimately, I think this all comes down to the wrestling for Devin Clark. Prachnio doesn't have an amazing takedown defense by any means. It's 54%. So I do expect Prachnio to get taken down at some point in this fight. If it is early, I think it's Devin Clark all day because he's going to steal that first round and give himself confidence to take him down again in the second. So, yeah, I got to stick with Devin Clark here. I'm not invested in this fight hardly at all. I don't like what I've seen out of either guy much lately, so I'm probably staying away betting-wise.
Yeah, it's wild to think that Marcin Prachnio once had a win against Khalil Roundtree. And that was only 3 years ago. It's 3 years ago, but still, that was a fight where he was a big dog and he pulled it off on the fact that Khalil Roundtree just didn't really show up too much.
No.
And ultimately that's kind of why he's got 2 wins in the UFC. Khalil didn't really show up that fight. William Knight definitely didn't show up that fight. I mean, a fight that plays out on the feet for 15 minutes, William Knight landed 8 significant strikes. Not a single one to the head. 0 significant strikes to the head. Prachnio was just kicking him at range, and William Knight was like, "Sure, dude, just let me. Yep. I'll let you. Just kick me." And I actually think Prachnio broke his foot, kicking him for 3 rounds just because they're free kicks. So yeah, 2 of his 3 UFC wins are kind of to guys that didn't show up. And then the other win is to Ike Villanueva, the GOAT, Big Ike, or Hurricane Ike. Isn't that his nickname? Yeah, Hurricane Ike. So yeah, I mean, not a great UFC run for Marcin Prachnio, but he does have the skills to win a fight if this does play out on the feet.
Yeah.
And Devin Clark has been a guy for me where it's I just don't know what I can expect from him. In the Dawoon Jung fight, uses his strength in his wrestling beautifully. That is 100% what he needed to do in that fight. Picks up a win as an underdog. And then you look at the Mirzakhanov fight, he just didn't even try really to shoot takedowns. Didn't shoot a single takedown on Mirzakhanov, who's one of the better strikers. He's a shorter guy. I get it. You get a guy that's kind of your size height-wise, and you might want to strike with him, but Mirzakhanov, you got to take him down because he's got some good striking. He's going to beat you up. So it's just very frustrating to know what you're going to get from Devin Clark in the last fight against Nzechukwu. He goes for the takedowns, but Nzechukwu is just so much bigger than him. It didn't really matter. I don't really like 2-1 on Devin Clark here because I don't know what I'm going to get. And for Marcin Prachnio, as a dog, I also don't really have too much confidence in him. So this is probably one I'll stay away from. For the pick, I'll go with Devin Clark because the path to victory is there. And Prachnio, like you said, when he gets to the ground, he can get taken down pretty easily. Philip Lins took him down 4 times, Petrino 4 times, and ultimately subbed him. So I think Devin Clark should be able to get him down and get a win. But, you just never know. You never know what these fighters are going to go in, like what game plan they're going to go in with. So I'll take it for the pick.
Prachnio got knocked out in his first 3 UFC fights. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Kind of a little comeback.
Yeah, it was. It was quite the comeback. We'll see if he can keep it going, but I don't think so. Strawweight bout. Your girl, Loma Lookboonmee.
I love Loma.
You love you some Loma. And she's on a good little streak here. And she's coming in as a big favorite against Bruna Brasil, who is coming off a win against the female McGregor, Shauna Bannon, in a fight where she took her down twice. She outlanded her by 2 significant strikes, picked up a unanimous decision win, and a much-needed win for her because in her debut, she got knocked out by Denise Gomes, didn't look good in that fight, and Loma is on a 2-fight winning streak, did beat Denise Gomes, and then in her last fight, looked like a beast against Elise Reed, who, if you show up to fight, probably going to look like a beast against her, so... Who you got in this one? I'm going to assume you're taking your girl Loma here.
I can't fade her. Dude, Loma's made me so much money. And it's crazy, though, because she always seems to come in as like a minus 200. Like, it's always right there. She's minus 250 here, but it's never above like minus 250. It's always right in that range. For the way she strikes in her Muay Thai is so clean, but she doesn't really get many knockouts or finishes. It's kind of strange because she is very aggressive and you think she would get more. But she's a girl, since I started watching her come into the UFC, she's always had some decent takedowns in her back pocket. But it seems like her grappling after she gets the takedown is steadily improving. Like it's getting better and better to where she's not just a Muay Thai striker who can land a takedown if she has to in a fight. Like I like what I've seen out of her. Elise Reed, got the submission in the second round. Before that, she was in a bad situation multiple times against Denise Gomes. At the end of that, I think it was the first or second round. Like she almost got submitted. She showed she's tough though, and I think it lit a fire under her ass because she came out and just kind of laid it on Denise for the rest of the fight, which is a good win considering Denise Gomes is coming off a loss, but before that, just knocking girls out left and right. Loses to Lupi Godinez, who is on a nice little win streak now, and she just beats everybody else that she's supposed to. And I think Bruna Brasil is another girl she's supposed to beat. I haven't been overly impressed with Bruna. I did take her against O'Bannon in her last fight, but I faded her. Let's see. Was she in Kansas City when we were there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, against Denise.
Yep.
Denise knocked her out. That was my dog of the week. And, so Bruna shows she can get hit. She is a decent striker on the feet. She's got some grappling, but I just think everywhere this fight goes, she's just kind of a step below Loma here. Loma's going to probably have I don't know about the volume. We'll probably have a little bit more volume. She's going to be more accurate. She's going to land the good kicks to the legs and the body. And if Bruna wants to grapple with Loma, I think this is she's not as strong as Loma here. Loma's shorter, compact. She's really strong. I don't think Bruna is going to be shooting double legs or grabbing onto a single leg and drag a Loma down by any means. So, yeah, anywhere this fight goes, I just think Loma is just going to be a level above her here. So, I think she could even finish her here too. I think Loma's a girl. She's got the skill set. Like I said, she's getting better to where she's going to pull a little string of wins by finish together. So I'll be looking at some props on her. I can never lay off Loma.
Yeah, she so the current concern here for me with Loma is the height and reach disadvantage because she's been fighting a lot of girls. She was pretty small for a strawweight, 5'1",
very small,
61.5-inch reach. Not the biggest strawweight. And she's fighting a girl who is a good frame for strawweight. She is longer. She's pretty built. I mean, you see the abs on the screen. She's got some strength to her, but the upside for Loma is she's been using her wrestling very well in her last few fights. I mean, took Elise Reed down twice, submitted her. Took Denise Gomes down 4 times. Took Sam Hughes down 4 times. And I think she could take down Bruna Brasil. I think she's probably going to need to. Bruna Brasil, 50% takedown defense in her UFC career. That includes the Contender Series as well. And ultimately, I think Loma is good enough on the feet to overcome the height and reach disadvantage, and she can mix in the takedowns as well. And Bruna Brasil may have some chin issues. because she's been knocked out 3 times in her UFC career. Loma, not a lot of knockouts on her career, but she does have some mean striking, some mean Muay Thai. The kicks, the hands are there as well. Maybe she does pick up a knockout win. She's only got one in her UFC career, but training out a Bang Tao Muay Thai in Thailand, seems like her game has really progressed throughout her UFC career. I mean, she came in, what was it, 4-0? Yeah, 4-0. And she's had a lot of experience, 7 fights in the UFC. Brasil, coming off the win to Shauna Bannon, who I don't think is very good. Yeah. Or at least she didn't show it in her UFC debut. So I'm going to go with Loma as well. I'll be with you on that. Never really liked taking women's chalk, but I do think she probably gets the win. We'll see if I put a bet on her or not. Lightweight bout, Damir Hadzovic coming in as the big underdog against the debuting Blažević. I had a bet on Blažević as a dog on the Contender Series.
Yep.
And he was facing Dylan Salvador, who was very highly touted because he had that kickboxing match with Giga Chikadze where he won. And I know a lot of people were looking at that like, this guy's shoe-in to the UFC. He is a very good, clean, and good striker. But Blažević, he's a dog, man. And he was a plus 125 dog in that fight. Cashes it, first round knockout. Just laid some mean hands on him. Hit him with a knee to the liver. Salvador goes down, and he gets a UFC contract. Big favorite in this one. Who you got?
Yeah, I like Blažević. I think he's one of those fighters. If he comes into the UFC and goes on a little win streak, he's got the potential to become a decent-sized star. Like, he's got that style that people are going to like to watch. He's strong, and coming from Germany. I mean, I don't know, when's the last time we had a German star in the UFC?
Hold on. Is it German? No, it's Belgium.
Or Belgium. Yeah, sorry.
Belgium.
Even better. I mean, can you name another Belgian fighter right now?
He's Nigerian, but he's out of
Trains out. Yeah. But I think he's just cut out to be a fun fighter for one. He's got some pop in his hands. But even coming into the Contender Series, he was a dog, and I was almost shocked because you watch his regional scene tape, and there's not really any fight on that regional scene that really gave me cause for concern, him heading into that fight. And he gets the win. He's going to come in here against Hadzovic, which this kind of tells me the UFC seeing the same thing. They think this kid could be something. They're giving him Damir Hadzovic, who's 1-3 in his last 4. His only win, Yancy Medeiros. He lost to Mark DeCasey. Just got taken down. I think it was 8 times in that fight. Landed 5 significant strikes. Just had no chance at all. And on the feet, he's not like a lights out striker by any means. He's good. He'll land some decent shots, but against a guy like Blažević, I think it just takes a couple big ones, and I think Hadzovic is going to be in trouble here. I like Blažević. Definitely not betting on him on the money line at minus 285 making his debut. It's kind of just a cold hard rule about MMA betting. But I do like him a lot to get this win here.
Yeah, I like him. He's got a great style, fan-friendly style. Throws really hard, very explosive, rips to the body very nicely. A lot of those combinations you see in the Contender Series look really sharp against a good striker in Salvador. Hadzovic, his striking is a little bit more hook-centered. He's not really a guy that fights behind the jab or is give these mean combinations. He's more of a guy that going to walk forward, look to land some hooks, and try to put you out. He is 37 years of age. That is a concern because he's probably near the end of his UFC career. Probably a fight where if he loses, he gets cut. And Oki making his debut, it seems like a spot where they're kind of setting him up to get a win here and get rid of Hadzovic. Not a lot of good wins for Hadzovic, which ultimately leads me to the point where I'm like, he's not really getting it done against the decent level fighters. I think Blažević is good enough to get a win here and could put him out, but Hadzovic only been knocked out once in his career. He did get submitted by Moicano for almost 4 years ago. So he's not super active either. So maybe he's been in the lab cooking up some good stuff, but I just don't see it. I think Blažević gets the win here. Yes, it is pretty chalky. And betting on a chalk dude on his UFC debut is always frightening. But sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But I'll take it for the pick nonetheless. Welterweight bout, another guy making his UFC debut as a chalky favorite. Carlos Prates coming in as minus 225 against Trevin Giles, who sits as a plus 185 underdog. Carlos Prates is not from Belgium. He is from Brazil. And he looked damn good on the Contender Series. And honestly, one of the better performances, I would say, from that season. He just looked really good, really composed, and ultimately looked like he knew he was going to go in there, get a knockout. The shot that he landed on Mitch Ramirez was just a left hand down the pipe, and it looked like he stunned him with like a taser. Like it just right on the chin. The guy went like, ugh, and fell back. So you could see why he's a big favorite in this spot, but Trevin Giles been around for a while, fought a lot of good competition. He's fought Rodrigues, the champ, Michael Morales, Gabriel Bonfim, got a win over Roman Dolidze. So he's got the experience. He is a dog here. Do you like him or not?
Yeah, he's fought, like you said, he's fought Dolidze, he's fought some high-level guys, and then Carlos Prates, I always want to say Prates, but Prates has a win over Charles Oliveira. The wrong Charles Oliveira, but nonetheless, a guy named Charles Oliveira. But no, this is a fight that scares me, though, because people are going to watch the Contender Series fight. They're going to see the knockout. They're going to see the striking over Mitch Ramirez. But coming into this against Trevin Giles, like it's just so there's such a gap between that type of fighter and Mitch Ramirez on the Contender Series compared to a guy like Trevin Giles, who, like you said, he's fought these guys like Dolidze, has a win over Preston Parsons, who just got a win over Simmelsberger. So it's the level of competition between these two is just very, very wide. Trevin Giles, if he comes out here and wants to stand and strike with Prates, I think it's going to get dicey for him. He's not the most volume-based striker or, slick boxing where he's just knocking guys out cold by any means. And Carlos is. Like, Carlos will find the chin if you want to play that game. Trevin, though, if he can get the takedowns, which he has a high percentage, he lands takedowns at 55%, and he seems to use them kind of when he needs to. Like, it's not like his first go-to by any means, but when he does look for that game, he's been successful in the UFC against higher level competition. So if it goes to the ground too, I think he's going to be better there. Carlos has lost, let's see, he's lost 6 fights, 3 of them by submission, 2 of them by KO. It's been a long time since he's taken a loss. I think it dates back to 2019. So you're looking at almost 5 years this summer. Like, once you get to summer, it'll be 5 years since he lost. And before that, when he's actually losing by finish, like submission and punches, it's way back in the 2017, 2013. It's been a while. You can tell it's a guy who's really improved his game and gotten better with age and experience. But, to pay minus 225 on a debuter against Trevin Giles, who is coming off of a loss to a Bonfim brother, coming off before that a win over Parsons, and then fighting really good competition before that, it would make me extremely nervous here. I don't know if I'm, willing to bet on Trevin Giles as a dog here, but I don't think I'm willing to touch Carlos Prates here either.
Yeah, I saw that performance from Prates on the Contender Series, and I'm like, I can't wait to bet on this guy when he's in the UFC, because I think he's an absolute stud. And then we get this line against a guy like Trevin Giles, and I'm like pulling back a little bit. I'm like, all right, this is a little dicey, because Prates, he's got Muay Thai tatted on his chest, so he's a damn good striker. And if you watch the film on him, very good. But you zoom out to his entire professional career, like, he can get finished. Like, he can get taken down. He can get subbed. He can get knocked out. And Trevin Giles has a way of making these fights close. Like, you zoom out on him too. In his professional career, he's got wins on the regional scene against Brendan Allen, against Ryan Spann. 2 very good guys. One of them, Ryan Spann, is a 205er. And Trevin Giles was an ex-middleweight, moved down to 170, definitely the right weight class for him. Athletic guy. And in this one, if he doesn't get chinned, he's got a good chance to get a win. And that's really what it comes down to, because Trevin Giles has been knocked out a few times in the UFC. He got dropped by Preston Parsons, even though they didn't really score it as a knockdown. Preston Parsons not a guy that's like big knockout. I don't think he has a single knockout win on his record, but did clip him. And it just seems like maybe the chin might fail Trevin Giles in this fight. But at minus 225, I don't know. It just seems like a trap. Seems like you get a spot here where Prates comes in, very confident. Trevin Giles doesn't want to engage too much on the feet. He's got a great jab, and maybe looks for some takedowns. Prates didn't defend the only takedown that Mitch Ramirez shot on him on the Contender Series. Did get up from it within like the first minute or so. But Trevin Giles, I would probably look for some takedowns, definitely, to wear him out. Maybe you could take over. But for the pick, I'm going to go with Prates because I do think he's probably a stud. But you just never know until they fight a UFC level guy. Like, you just don't know. So these are the spots where you might want to just wait it out and feel it, how he does in this fight moving forward for him. Middleweight bout, Rodolfo Viera coming in as a minus 145 favorite against Armin Petrosyan. The rebooking was supposed to happen last year on the Brasil card in November. Armin Petrosyan goes down with some type of sickness. Some people may say the Brazilians poisoned him. Some people would. But either way, we're getting the rebooking here. And it is due for a rebooking. We broke this fight down before. A few months have passed. I think we were both on Armin Petrosyan at the time. Did you change your mind or not?
I really haven't, and I'm glad that we had months in between. Like, I'm glad they didn't rebook it for like 2 weeks out. I'm pretty sure what we did was the next card after like 296, and then we had a long break. That's probably part of the reason why.
It was 295 after that. Yeah.
Oh, so there was a while. So I mean, they put a good amount of time in between the rebooking, and that would make me a little more confident to stay on Armin Petrosyan, because if you make that fight, 3 weeks later or something, and Petrosyan feels like he's recovered but he's not, then I'd be a little bit more nervous. But this is your classic striker versus grappler. Armin Petrosyan has some great kickboxing. He's got some pop in his hands. He wins a lot of decisions, but his volume is so good. Like, when he is able to fight at space, especially when he's not worrying about takedowns, his volume is very good. His accuracy is very good. He doesn't get hit that much in return. He lands nearly 6 per minute, and he only gets hit with 3. Like, that's pretty damn good striking numbers so far in the UFC. But in this fight, he is going to be having to worry about the takedowns at all times. Rodolfo Viera, when he fought Chris Curtis, he shot, I think it was like 22 takedowns. He had 22 takedown attempts in one fight. Was it 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 exactly. Got all 20 stuffed, I believe, which, Chris Curtis has great takedown defense. But, I didn't like seeing that. I watched that fight back, and Armin Petrosyan, bigger guy than Chris Curtis, longer. I think he's going to have more leverage in those types of situations. And I look at like the Cody Brundage fight, like Rodolfo got dropped in that first round. That fight was close to being over. That was almost another first round win for Cody Brundage. He was able to survive that, though, use the wrestling and grappling to stay safe, and then finally got the submission in the second round. But you jump from Cody Brundage to Armin Petrosyan, who is not going to gas after that first round like Brundage did, who's going to be dangerous at all times when this fight's on the feet. I just see this fight going more ways for Armin Petrosyan. And if Rodolfo does get the takedowns, Petrosyan's not like a fish out of water on the ground by any means. He's not going to, give up a submission right away. Like, I feel like when he has been taken down in the UFC, like against AJ Dobson and Gregory Rodrigues, like, he's found ways to stay safe. And when he gets back to his feet, he goes right back to work, and he starts uncorking on these guys. So, yeah, I don't think that Rodolfo's the highest level of wrestler. I think he's a good grappler. And I think if Armin should be able to stuff some takedowns here, and will win the minutes on the feet for sure, and will have a chance to really do the damage on Rodolfo here and even find a finish possibly. So I got to stick with Armin.
Yeah, this is one of the fights where whoever wins is going to look really good in the way that they do it, because Petrosyan will outclass Viera on the feet just based on volume, based on technique. He's got very solid kickboxing all around. Viera needs to get the fight to the ground. Not that he's like a god-awful striker, like a Ryan Hall type of striking, but it's just going to be levels on the feet, and there's going to be levels on the ground. And that does scare me for Armin Petrosyan, because he's been taken down in every single UFC fight except his last one. He's got 36% takedown defense. If Viera can land one might be the only takedown that he needs, because he could just snatch something up. Considering Petrosyan survived with Caio Baralho, does give me a little bit more confidence that if he does get taken down, he can survive. And Viera, you look at his wins in the UFC, they're not very good, or they're not against like very good competition. Stolshvis, Saperbeck, Safarov, I mean, Oscar Pashota, like guys that you just don't really, doesn't really ring a bell as far as like very high level competition. And Petrosyan, it ultimately could come down to a fight where it goes to a decision, and it's just based on damage. Petrosyan is going to get the win if Viera gets him down for 2 or 3 minutes in a round. But he's only looking for submissions, only looking for position. And then Petrosyan's up for those 2 minutes, lands 20 significant strikes, might go to him. For the pick, I'm going to go with Armin Petrosyan. If he continues to go down as a dog, I would love it even more if he gets to like plus 115, plus one, or if he's at plus 115. If he goes plus 120, 125, even 130, it'd be like a lot better. But for Viera, minus 145, probably not something I'd look at. Petrosyan will be the pick for me.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say too is like when he's fighting the Gregory Rodriguez's and getting taken down, and then Caio, I think those guys have better gas tanks than Rodolfo too. Like I think if Armin survives the first round, like of takedown attempts, and even if he does get taken down, survives without getting subbed, I think it becomes a lot more increasingly harder for Rodolfo to land what he wants to here. So yeah, I don't know. I like Armin a lot, especially at what is it, plus 115 now? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great line.
Lightweight bout. Michael Johnson coming in as a slight favorite over Darius Flowers, making his sophomore outing. He made his debut at 170. Looked a little undersized. He's going down to 155. Seems like the right move for him. But Michael Johnson, 21-19. Looks like an NFL score. But those 19 losses, I mean, a lot of people might look at that record and laugh at it. At the end of the day, Michael Johnson has fought the who's who's. I mean, the Justin Gaethjes, the Khabib Nurmagomedovs, Dustin Poirier, but Neil Dariush, Nate Diaz, he could go on forever. I mean, he's got losses to good competition, and definitely nothing that Darius Flowers has seen. It's an interesting matchup because you get a guy who's older, got a lot of miles, against the guy who's a little bit younger, and big power. What are you thinking?
Yeah, the big power part scares me because Johnson, he's always in the fight until he gets clipped. Like he was doing good work against Diego Ferreira in his last fight. Diego's just a little ball of fire, and all it took was one, and it just completely slumped him. Michael Johnson, good striking, like it's very fluid. He'll surprise you at times, and then other times, he loses a split decision that Jamie Malarkey couldn't put Jamie out. Jamie's getting knocked out by everybody, by Nasrat Hakparas, who only had like one other knockout in his career in the UFC. So, you just never know what you're going to get with Michael Johnson because he went on a bad losing streak, came in, beat Alon Patrick, lost to Jamie, and then as like a plus 200 and something dog, just puts it on Mark Jacasey. It was very surprising. I was at that fight in Orlando. But, against Flowers here, I think people will look at Flowers' last fight, first fight against Jake Matthews, and they'll see that he was, stopped. But what he showed in that fight was like he's almost like a little annoying fighter. He's always in your face. He's throwing everything he's got into his punches. He shows he does have power. Like, he was landing some good, significant strikes against Jake Matthews, but ultimately kind of ran out of gas. And I think cutting down to 155, he's going to have some speed there too. I think he's the type of fighter, if he can land those shots on a guy like Michael Johnson, Michael Johnson is going to be in serious trouble of getting knocked out. Darius showed he had some speed too, especially early in the fight against Jake Matthews. So I think 55 will definitely be a weight class that suits him a lot better than 170. He's only 5'9". He's got a 71-inch reach, which will be good. And Michael Johnson at this point just seems like, he's obviously a little older. He's got a lot of miles on that record, a lot of losses, a lot of punches to the head. And I just think if Darius can land one of them, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, on the screen it says 31, but he's actually 37. If you count like fighter years, he's probably like 50. He's been in a lot of wars, taking a lot of damage, and coming off the nasty KO loss. It's a lot to throw in your head when you're making a chalk bet on Michael Johnson. But then you think, he's got some really slick hands. It's just a matter of fact if he could take the shot. And Darius Flowers is a guy that is going to stand there and bang with you. And the real demise of both of these fighters has been the ground game. Like, Darius Flowers has been submitted 5 times, and Michael Johnson has been submitted 1, 2, 5, 8, 9 times. So 9 submission losses for Johnson, 5 for Darius Flowers. If either of these guys goes to the ground, I would be very shocked. So it's probably a fight that plays out on the feet. Darius Flowers probably has the better durability at this point in both of these guys' careers. And as much as it pains me to go against Michael Johnson, I think I'm going to go with Darius Flowers in this spot. Just you got to be able to take a punch. And Michael Johnson looked great in his last fight until he didn't. I think that could probably happen here.
Does Darius Flowers have a wrestling background? I feel like leading up to the fight, I heard that against Jake Matthews. I mean, he took Jake Matthews down in that fight.
Yeah.
One time, just being strong and scrappy. So, wouldn't be surprised if you see him do it to Johnson too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. And, that's definitely a path to victory as well. So I'm going to go with the dog here, and we can move on. Middleweight bout, Gregory Rodrigues coming in as the favorite against Brad Tavares. This was a fight that was supposed to happen like last year. Last year it was the UFC 283 card. Yeah, UFC 283. They were supposed to fight on the Teixeira versus Jamal Hill in Brazil, and Tavares withdrew. And Gregory Rodrigues got the short end of the stick because he gets Bruno Ferreira as the short notice replacement. He's a big favorite. He gets chinned. So he probably wants to get some revenge on Brad Tavares because Tavares pulling out got him chinned. And he's coming in as a favorite here, probably rightfully so. Gregory Rodrigues is one of those guys that has all the skills, just sometimes it doesn't always fight with the best fight IQ, and sometimes the chin lets him down. Brad Tavares has been around for a while, 23 UFC fights. He's fought the likes of Israel Adesanya, Dricus Du Plessis, Robert Whittaker, the who's who of the middleweight division. Coming in as a dog here. Think he can pull it off?
I honestly think he can. I think he can pull it off. It's not a fight that, I would be super confident in. But his style, like, he's going to want to strike, obviously, with Gregory Rodrigues. Rodrigues doesn't seem to have much problem standing and trading with guys. And so if I am Brad Tavares, I'm scared about the power early in the fight. I'm scared I'm going to get chinned here early. But, Gregory Rodrigues has started out with mixed martial arts or combat sports as a, jiu-jitsu player. He's got great grappling. He's got averages like 2.5 takedowns per fight. Brad Tavares has an 82% takedown defense over a 14-year career in the UFC. He came into the UFC in 2010. He's fought in some good wrestlers. He stuffed a lot of their takedowns. You saw him in his last fight against Weidman, stuff every single shot that Weidman had and absolutely chewed his leg up. It was disgusting. I couldn't believe that fight didn't get stopped to leg kicks at some point. Weidman was just a beast and powered through it. I thought the stoppage against Bruno Silva was a little early for Tavares. I think he deserved to go a little longer. But he did show, he is hittable, and Gregory Rodrigues does have a lot of power. But for Gregory, it's like his head doesn't really leave the center line when he strikes. Like I feel like that's one part of his striking that still needs work. Brad Tavares is very accurate with his striking when he won. I mean, that's his game. He's a kickboxer. He does it well. I think if he gets the Gregory's leg here, like he did in his last fight against Weidman, that's going to be very beneficial down the stretch of the fight. Tavares is fast too. Like he showed that in the Weidman fight. He's still very fast. And, when he does connect, he had Weidman hurt a few times. It had him stunned. And Gregory takes those straight shots down the middle. Like I said, when he can't get his head off the center line and he goes down. Saw it against Bruno Ferreira. And that shot was just out of nowhere, straight down the pipe, caught him on the chin and put him out. It's like Gregory Rodrigues has a button, and it's just right straight in the middle of the chin when he gets hit with the straight rights or straight lefts and he drops. So it's kind of the strikes that Brad Tavares likes to throw down the middle. If he stands and trades with them, I think somebody's going to get put away in this fight. I really do. Tavares doesn't have the most knockouts lately on his record, but then again, Gregory Rodrigues' chin just hasn't looked the best to me. I think he's very capable of getting put out by a striker like Brad. So I'm going Brad Tavares here. I've never been a big RoboCop guy. I think he's fun to watch and stuff, but again, you just can't really trust him at this type of price, in my opinion. He gets chinned a few times, and Brad's going to have his way with him.
Yeah, it is sketchy because you never know with Gregory Rodrigues. I mean,
and look who Brad's been in there with too. I mean, he's been in there with Drickus lately, Adesanya in 2018. Like this dude's fought the top guys.
Yeah, he's definitely got the experience. And this is one where I'm probably going to go back and forth all week because Gregory Rodrigues, he should be able to win this fight. And ultimately, if he goes into it with the game plan like he did with Tallulah, use the wrestling, use the grappling. Like you have that weapon. Your chin has failed you a couple times. And Brad Tavares, good takedown defense, 82%.
Yeah,
so
right.
It does. It's a red flag for if Gregory Rodrigues is going to go for the wrestling. But at the same time, like Tavares, don't really love his game because it's not like it doesn't stick out. Like when he hits you, it doesn't look like it impacts you too much. I mean, he gave Dricus du Plessis a good first round and then got whooped after that. It goes into the fight with Bruno Silva as a favorite, gets knocked out. And then the fight with Weidman, like Weidman looked like he was 60-year-old dude walking in there. Like he had no legs at all. Like he just the way that, I mean, Brad Tavares, props to him. Kick his legs, dude. Like kick his legs as hard as you can. And he did exactly that, stuffed all the takedowns. And that was that. But I mean, it's Chris Weidman. And if you're going to go based off of a win over Chris Weidman, a win over Omari Akhmedov, a win over Antonio Carlos Jr., those are his 3 wins in the last almost 6 years. I don't know that I could do it. Gregory Rodrigues will be the pick for me. Don't love the price. Don't love the chin issues as well, but he'll be the pick. And,
but
I'll take it.
It's the same thing for Gregory too. His wins are Dennis Tallulah, Chidi Njokuani, and Julian Marquez. It's like, dude, here's where I think this fight, what happens in this fight. Gregory Rodrigues' striking is really good when he's pushing you up against the fence and just throwing bombs at you. And then Brad Tavares, like that's where he gets hit. Like when he was getting hit by Weidman, it was going backwards into the cage. And that's where Gregory does his best work, is when he's the one fighting downhill. But it's also where Gregory gets clipped too. Like that's where he gets hurt, is when he's just kind of throwing these hooks and combinations and just leaves his chin out there. And Brad, has been a good counter striker. So I think that's how the fight plays out. I think it's either Gregory knocks him out going back against the cage or hurts him, or Brad clips him coming in trying to use that type of striking. So it's very interesting, dude. This is, I don't know, minus 225 on RoboCop just screams parlay buster to me, honestly. Yeah. It's very hard to get a read.
If I knew he was going to go in there and look to wrestle and grapple him, I'd take him all day. But gun to my head, he's the pick, but not confident. Middleweight bout, Robert, I think it's Dryzek. I don't know exactly. I mean, these are Polish names, so the pronunciations are always super weird, but I think it's Dryzek. I could be wrong. Against Ihor Potieria, sitting as a dog, and ultimately hasn't been the best run for Ihor Potieria. Robert Dryzek making his UFC debut, 5-0 in his last 5, and a lot of first-round knockouts. I got to point out the over-under. The under is steamed to minus 260. So they're not expecting this fight to last long. Who you got winning, though?
Yeah, I don't think it lasts long either. But I believe this is at 185, right?
Yes, that is another thing to point out. It's scheduled for middleweight, 185, which is Robert Dryzek's normal fighting weight. But that is not Ihor Potieria's normal fighting weight. All of his UFC fights have been at 205, and he's taking this fight on short notice. Very weird. Very, very weird. Because you're going to drop 20 pounds on a short notice fight. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it is weird. But he doesn't really, at least to me, he doesn't seem like he's like the biggest 205er though.
Right.
But like short notice, it's kind of, that's a lot of extra weight to cut.
20 pounds. That's a big
20 pounds. It's like you're normally cutting to 205, and now you're going to go on short notice, and it's 20 pounds past what you're normally cutting to. Yeah. Like that's concerning, especially against a guy who does have a ton of power and a lot of knockouts early in fights. But say what you want about Ihor in his last fight against Bellato. I think he shocked some people on how, for one, tough he is. He was able to take some shots, but he also had Bellato damn near out of there too. Dropped him. He's got some power. That's not a question at all. It's just the durability is the thing with Ihor. I mean, he's been finished in 3 of his 4 UFC fights. Yeah, Nikolai Negamariano finished him. I think that line was near pick'em. I think Ihor might have been slightly underdog. And then he beat Shogun Rua in Brazil, which I would have been very, very shocked if he lost that fight. But then he got Carlos Olberg and Rodolfo Bellato. I mean, he's fighting killers, dude. I mean, he is fighting killers. You have to give him that. He's just getting finished by him. So, if this fight ends in the first round, what's that?
He's fighting killers.
Carlos Olberg?
Carlos Olberg's the only killer.
Rodolfo Bellato's a savage, like with the cardio, and you don't think so?
Nah, he almost got knocked out by Potieria. It was a minus like 400 favor or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, he survived and he came back and got the finish. Yeah. And I mean, Negamariano is not, I guess, a savage, but if you look at his, he's only got 2 losses.
Durable. He's very durable. He's tough. Little undersized. Yeah, 4-2 in the UFC is not bad. But
yeah. I guess his knockouts are Ike Villanueva.
Yeah, he got the Ike treatment. So, Ihor is not fighting killers, but he's not fighting like just straight
bums. Yeah. But the Carlos Olberg fight. What's that?
He's not getting the Ike treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, coming in here, if this fight ends in the first round, I would be willing to bet it's Ihor getting knocked out. Bad weight cut, down an extra 20 pounds, and you've already been getting your lights shut out. I don't like the chances there, but if he can survive and just make it a dog fight later in the fight, there's a chance he wins round 2. If he has better cardio, which is to be determined. You don't see his fights really going that long. There's so many unknowns there too, and with Dryzek too, you just don't know. Knocking guys out in the first round in the regional scene, coming to the UFC, how's that going to translate? It's just a very sketchy fight, but one that's probably going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch. I'm going to stick with Dryzek here. I don't like the weight cut here. That's my biggest thing. A big weight cut, 20 pounds more than normal against a big power puncher just doesn't sit right with me. It screams red flags all day. Yeah. So give me Dryzek.
I got a feeling this fight's probably going to move to a catch weight of 195 or something.
I would hope.
Or maybe it's just a complete error and it's at 205, which would suck for Dryzek because he'd be probably very significantly undersized. But it is at 185. it's tough on Potieria to cut those 20 pounds. And, you're usually fighting faster guys. I mean, when have we really seen a drop from 205 to 185 that like worked out well?
Paul Craig.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah,
fight,
nobody's dropping that on a few weeks' notice and having success.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be something that was in his mind immediately after his last fight, because that was what was it? That was UFC Austin. That was like December. So, yeah, I mean, when I watch film on both of these guys, Ihor is kind of he's a southpaw. Dražek's an orthodox fighter. And Potieria is kind of more light on his feet, hands low, and he's kind of more loopy. He doesn't really sit down on a lot of punches. Dražek is the complete opposite. Feet are usually planted. He's going to fight behind a jab. He's going to look to land some bombs. And they're not like big loopy bombs. They're usually pretty well calculated and sharp. So I think Dražek probably finds the chin early in this fight, round 1 or 2. And from what we've seen from Potieria in the UFC, he does fade as the fight goes on against Negumereanu, against Bellato. You could chalk the Bellato fight up to he blew his gas tank trying to get him out of there. Probably could have or should have been stopped. But either way, I don't really think he's got great cardio. And moving down to 185, I don't think it'll get even better. So I'm going to go with Dražek, take the chance on the debuter. I mean, minus 190 is a little sketchy on a debuter, but I just don't think Potieria is very good.
Yeah, I look at Dražek's record too, and it's hard to tell how good some of these guys are. I think lately when he's fighting the Octagon promotion, Octagon with a K, I think those guys are decent. He does have a fight in 2013 against Sadabusi, which is crazy, lost a decision. But outside of that and in between those fights to now, it's hard to tell how good the competition is. But one thing's for sure, he does have a lot of power. So
yeah. The co-main event, Dan Ige coming in as a minus 190 favorite against Andre Fili. Coming in as the dog, taking this on relatively short notice. Ige was supposed to fight Lerone Murphy. He pulls out. In steps Andre Fili, who's coming off the big knockout win at UFC 296 against Lucas Almeida. Dan Ige coming off the loss to Bryce Mitchell, where he got taken down and controlled and ultimately lost the fight that way. Dan Ige as the favorite, Andre Fili as a dog. Who you got?
At first, I was thinking Fili. I had it in my head that he was going to make this a very tough fight for Ige, and it will be a good fight in my opinion. But I wish that if I were to take Fili, I wish that Dan Ige had been knocked out in his past fights in the UFC, but he just hasn't. And he's fighting guys like Josh Emmett, Korean Zombie, Calvin Kattar, good strikers, and nobody's been able to stop him. And for Fili, he came out there against Nathaniel Wood, gets the knockdown, looks phenomenal at times in that fight, and then gives up a knockdown back, makes some mistakes, loses the unanimous decision. But I mean, it just shows that Fili can kind of hang around with guys like that, and I would put Ige kind of in that category as Nathaniel Wood, a guy who's got good striking. He's fast. He's a little shorter, but he's always going to be in a dogfight and in a close fight. He's not going to be easily put away. And for Fili, man, we've seen him get KO'd. We saw him KO'd against Anderson Brito. We see him get hurt a lot in these fights. And if you let Dan Ige start teeing off on you, like he can do some damage. We saw it against Damon Jackson. I was on the KO in that fight. Gavin Tucker he put out. He's just a solid fighter all around. His takedown defense is the greatest, which, Fili can get takedowns. I just don't see it being his first option in many fights. So I don't see him coming out here and being able to get Dan Ige down. So on the feet, who's going to land more volume? Like, they're both pretty damn even in that category. They both throw 3.7, 3.8 significant strikes per minute. Fili gets hit with a little more than Ige gets hit with. I think Dan Ige's striking defense probably a little bit better. But as far as this line goes, like, I don't like how wide it is necessarily. I think it could be a little tighter. For the pick, I'm taking Dan Ige. I just think, again, striking's a little better. And if anybody's going to get put out here, I think it's Andre Fili.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that you said. I think the line could be a little bit tighter if, Danny comes down to minus 160, minus 170. I'd be a little bit more inclined to take him. But near a 2-1, it gets a little dicey. Andre Fili has the wrestling. He just never really uses it too much. At least, in most of his recent fights. He's got one takedown in his last 6 fights. So it's probably a fight that plays out on the feet. And Ige, I think, is just a little bit sharper, a little bit more impactful with his shots. And I'm going to take him to win as well. But if Fili can implement the wrestling, if it's a fight that plays out or a round that plays out on the feet, he scores a takedown to end it. Last minute in top control, land a couple shots. It's going to look good to the judges. Could definitely squeak out a win. But I don't think Ige. I don't think Fili is going to be looking to implement the grappling too much. Just haven't seen it. You can't really bet on something you haven't seen recently. And I think Ige, you look at who's Fili's losing to. I think Ige probably beats Nathaniel Wood.
Yeah.
And I think he beats Lucas Almeida, beats Bill Algeo. Brito might be a tough fight, but yeah, I think Ige gets the win here. That brings us to the main event. Joe Pyfer coming in as the favorite against Jack Hermansson as the underdog. Hermansson, 35 years of age. Pyfer, only 27. 4th fight in the UFC, gets the main event slot at the Apex. The crowd's going to be going wild for Joey P. And this will be a big win for him because Jack Hermansson's not an easy win by any means. But if you do look at the rankings, it's probably the easiest fight for Joseph Pyfer to, crack into the rankings. And it's ultimately one of these things where, a lot of the UFC, you could tell when the UFC's backing a fighter. And rightfully so. Joe Pyfer, fan-friendly fight style, big power, always going to look for the finish. Got a great story and a good personality as well. So I can definitely see why they did this. And minus 225 is a little sketchy because it is 5 rounds. Never seen Pyfer in 5 rounds. We've seen Hermansson in 5 rounds, and he looks good later. But maybe it won't last 5 rounds. Maybe Pyfer gets him out in the first or the second. What do you think?
Yeah, if Hermansson wants the chance, he's got to make it look like the Chris Curtis fight. I think that's his path to victory here. He's going to have to mix in the grappling too, which is something he, wasn't able to do against Chris. But I think if he stands and trades with them, Pyfer's dangerous enough to knock anybody out. He's got the hands. Even in the last fight against Al Hassan, Al Hassan's got some serious power, and Pyfer was able to take it. I don't think Pyfer's going to be in any danger on the feet here against Jack Hermansson. Jack Hermansson's not a striker that's going to go out there and put the lights out and find any knockouts or anything. At the same time, for Jack Hermansson to come out here and make it look like the Chris Curtis fight and just make it boring from the outside and kick his leg and point fight, Joe Pyfer is just not that type of a guy you can do that against. He's going to force you to fight. Joe Pyfer forces you to get in his face and fight. Plus, they're at the Apex, smaller cage against a bigger guy like Pyfer. I just don't see Hermansson having that much success with that game plan. Pyfer, 6'2", 75-inch reach. Hermansson, 6'1", 77-inch reach. Pyfer is going to be way bigger than Chris Curtis is. He's able to close the distance better than Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis wants you to come in and kind of he wants to counterpunch you and get combinations in tight. Pyfer too. I don't think he's going to come in and want to wrestle Jack Hermansson because Hermansson, at the end of the day, he's got a good takedown defense. He wears guys down a lot. And, Pyfer, if he can just stay in his face, march him backwards, I think he's got a chance to do some serious damage and even find a finish. Jack Hermansson's hard to put away. Guys aren't really necessarily knocking him out either. Besides, I guess, Roman Dolidze when he caught him in the calf slicer and then, was kind of forced to stop due to punches. But if anybody can, it's guys like Joe Pyfer and guys like Jared Cannonier who knocked him out. Those really strong dudes who throw straight shots right down the middle. Those are the type of guys Hermansson's got to worry about. And Joe Pyfer's riding a hell of a lot of momentum right now, too. He's undefeated in the UFC. Like you mentioned, his story is very inspiring. He's fighting for a lot more than Jack Hermansson, I would say, as far as, what he's got left to give this sport. He's got a more of a future and a longer career. I just think Hermansson, all of his game plans and past the victory here against Pyfer are just going to be extremely hard to implement due to Pyfer's first his strength, his grappling himself, but his style. His style is just hard to deal with. And if you get cracked by Pyfer, he's going to put the lights out of anybody. So, yeah, give me Joey P.
Yeah, I look at this fight like everything's got to go right for Jack Hermansson, but if one thing goes wrong, he's going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just don't see where I don't think Hermansson out wrestles him because Joe Pyfer's a very solid wrestler. We saw it in his last fight. Got takedowns with ease against Abdul, who's kind of like a fire hydrant who's probably going to be tough to take down. I mean, based on the stats, Pyfer has a 50% takedown defense because he got taken out once on the Contender Series, and then he defended once on the Contender Series. And then in his fight against Gerald Mearshart, like Mearshart couldn't even look for a takedown because Pyfer was just laying bombs on him. So I think Pyfer, he's so imposing in there too. He's a pretty big dude, very built. And the way that he walks you down, it looks like he's just cocked up, ready to throw. Like if you're going to engage with him, he's ready to come with something really, really hard. And with a lot of steam behind it, I think Hermansson, like you said, won't be able to stick to the outside and chip away with him. I just don't see him being able to do that. I honestly see him being somewhat gun shy, in the first couple of rounds to try to avoid the power and maybe try to take him into deeper waters. And if he tries to shoot takedowns, I think the uppercut for Joe Pyfer is going to be there. I watched a lot of tape on Hermansson. The way he shoots takedowns are kind of, head goes down right away, and he's kind of shooting right at your waist. And I think that uppercut, boom, little counter uppercut, that could be the one. So if he does that, we're coming back to this. And I want to be right if he knocks him out with an uppercut. But I do think Pyfer probably gets a finish within the first 3 rounds. And if he goes offensively with the wrestling, I think he's solid on the ground. I don't think we've been able to see like too much of it. But the arm triangle against Abdul looked really solid. Looks like he knows exactly where he wants to be. Very strong squeeze. Hermansson is a good grappler, good wrestler, but defensively, we don't know too much about it. I mean, 75% takedown defense, but a lot of these guys are usually looking to strike with them. And on the feet, I just don't think he has too much to offer. I think that's just the widest gap that we see in this fight. Pyfer's way more powerful, pretty technical as well. Maybe not as much volume, but definitely going to be able to put it on him. I'm going to take him for the pick. Get the win.
Yeah, something I love to look at too in fights like these is like which fighter has the killer instinct, and it's Pyfer by far here. Yeah. I mean, he's like a marauder. He'll come forward, and the shots he hits you with, I think that's something that Jack Hermansson has lacked lately. I feel like he had it early in his career. He was getting a lot of finishes. Like there was a stretch where he was KO, lost by KO, KO win, sub win, and as of late, it's just decisions, man. He's either losing split decisions, winning decisions, or getting TKO'd by Roman Dolidze. So yeah, I like the guy with the killer instinct, who's young, who's up and coming, starting to get more experience under his belt, and he's gonna look to put Hermansson away. And if you watch Pyfer's podcast, I think it was with Rogan, that he talked about like nearly pulling out of his last fight against Al Hassan. Like I forget if it was like an illness or injury or something. The guy talks about like never having a good camp. And so if he's saying he's feeling good, like I think you start to look at that finish prop here. And man, if Hermansson does want to go to the grappling, like Pyfer trains at a gym with killers on the ground. Like he's going to be well prepared for that style here too. So yeah, I like Pyfer a lot. I'm a big fan of Pyfer. I think he's going to be so much fun in the UFC.
I like it. Sign us up for Joey P. And those are the picks for UFC Vegas 86. Once again, if you want all the bets for this week's UFC card and the next 3 UFC cards. You get the monthly subscription, the double leg premium. The link is in the description down below. Join the fam, and we will cash some tickets. Other than that, you got anything else on the card before we hop on?
I'm seeing some violence. I don't know about you. I'm seeing some finishes. I'm pumped for it, though.
Yeah.
10 weeks. We got 10 weeks in a row here, and we got to capitalize. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we got 14 fights, so a lot to pick from, a lot to choose from. Choose your spots wisely. And, of course, stay tuned for the free pick on Saturday at the Double Leg on IG, at HI Picks on the medias for me. Where can they find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
And one last thing before we get out of here, the Best Bet show will drop later in the week. We'll give you a betting favorite, betting underdog, and a prop, both of us. And stay tuned for that because it's a free game. We're giving it out to you. So appreciate you all. Until next time, the Double Leg signing out.